This episode is brought to you by Robert Stevens Jewelers. Thank you to our sponsors for your support on our first season of the Alter Ego podcast. So I'm sitting with Janet Lacey. She's the president. We also have Tom Call with us and Margaret DeLuca. And we have an audience. So there are some folks that showed up this morning to join us and listen to our conversation. So as we're sitting here, you know, Margaret reached out to me. Would you say that was June or July? It was over the summer. It was early in the summer.
Yeah. It was quite a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you had reached out to me and I just started kind of deciding what I was doing into the fall, and we were getting into January as well for planning and for the podcast. And I said, well, interestingly enough, I'm getting into education and this is really fascinating. So how about I come up to Slippery Rock and why don't we have a conversation there? So we are at their facility here in Slippery Rock, PA. And I'm really excited to be in Slippery Rock, PA because one of my favorite sandwich shops is here, Bob Subs.
Bob Subs.
Bob Subs. I was so excited this morning. I was like, oh my gosh, if I have time, I'm going to go to Bob Subs before I go back to the office because I have another recording. But anyways, I digress. Educational, cultural, and recreational experiences for adults in an informal environment. I don't think we recognize how important it is to have an organization like this because most people just look forward to retirement. And I don't think they really prepare themselves for what that means, right? Especially for someone, you know, Janet, as we were sitting here talking, your resume, I'm going to say resume. I don't know. What do we want to say?
Resume works.
Yeah, your resume is very impressive. And one of the things that you just wrote down here for me that stood out that I'm really fascinated with is that you taught special education for a total of 33 years. You taught for 5 years in Ohio and 28 years in Pennsylvania. And how important that is. And I imagine how challenging something like that has to be because I don't think enough people understand there's so many different like layers, right, to special education. When you have students, they're not all on the same, I don't know if it's appropriate to say spectrum or how you would refer to different students, but you probably had students. How many students would you have in a class at any given time?
The lowest would have been 5 when I was teaching autistic support.
Okay.
And the multidisability class. When I taught preschool, which is called early intervention now, I'd have 12 to 15 per class, but I'd also have 3 classes of students. So my caseload would be up around 45, 50 students.
Wow. Okay.
Which was a lot.
Yeah. That's quite a lot. And so I think it's really important to, you know, after doing something for that long, it becomes your identity in a way, right?
Yes, very much so, yes.
And then all of a sudden one day it's like, you're not doing that anymore.
Correct.
Because it's like, well, now it's time to retire. And so it's sort of this like, what's next?
Yes. Well, and in my case, I went from doing a job that requires a lot of caretaking of my students and helping them to reach their potentials to needing to care for my parents who were getting older. And I have a brother with a disability, and I had to caretake the 3 of them, and which is one of the reasons I moved closer to home so that I could do that. And so I went sort of from one caretaking activity to another caretaking, and I think anybody that's done caretaking knows that a lot of time you put yourself in second, third, or fourth place in your priorities, and pretty soon you're not taking as good a care of yourself as you probably should.
Yeah. So, you had said that you were a caretaker for your mother, your father, and your brother with special needs. Mm-hmm. So can I ask, because you had a brother with special needs, is that sort of why you got into special education, or what was it that...
That's exactly why. Back then, the people with special needs were very much segregated away, and I wasn't even aware that population existed for the most part. I mean, you had the kids that were in the special ed class in elementary school, but they went there and stayed there the whole day. And it wasn't until my brother has Down syndrome, so it's a fairly significant disability there. And it wasn't until I went in there and I saw little kids with severe disabilities and going, oh, this whole world is around me, and I never knew that these people existed, and I felt very cheated, actually. It was like, because I just have always felt very drawn to the special needs population, and it just felt really weird that I think people were thinking they were shielding me from it, whereas I was wanting to embrace it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really wonderful. You know, you were raised in Portersville, Pennsylvania, graduated from Slippery Rock High School.
Go Rock.
Earned a Bachelor of Science degree in education with a dual major in special education and library science from Slippery Rock University. And then in 94, you earned your Master's of Education degree from Slippery Rock University. I feel like I need to stand up and hit the applause button because I can't reach it. Okay. That's fantastic. There's a lot more on here, too, that we can dig into. Let's talk to Tom. So Tom is sitting to the left of you. Hi, Tom.
Hi, good morning.
We were just having a little conversation about the Steelers, but we won't get into. I don't know what happened last night. Anyway, did they win?
They did not.
They did not.
There was a last minute touchdown by Cleveland in the snow.
In the snow. Well, you know, it's unfortunate that we lost to Cleveland, but we're going to move on from that. It's fine. It's football, right? It is a game too. I mean, I think a lot of.
Cleveland's given us a lot of trouble the last several years, no matter what their record was.
They sure have. That's a good point. You were born in Melrose, Massachusetts, raised in New Jersey, and you received your Bachelor of Arts from Shippensburg University. And we got into this just a little bit, and there's one other thing I wanted to get into here. And we talked about this on the phone last week. So after a stint with the U.S. Army, you spent most of your work life creating and organizing analytical studies at the Social Security Administration headquarters. But what I really, really loved that you brought up, because I think this is a good lesson for anyone who's listening or anyone who thinks that maybe it's too late. I say it's never too late as long as you're still alive. Unless, you know, I don't know, unless you want to take up gymnastics and learn the balance beam at like 70. Be careful, you know, but hey, why not? Whatever, right? C'est la vie. At age 49, while still working, you began taking graduate classes at Notre Dame of Maryland University, and you eventually received a Master of Arts degree in 2005. And I think that's extraordinary.
You know, around the late 90s, our son was graduating from high school, and our daughter was just a couple of years behind that. And I'm in my late 40s. Some people have midlife crisis, but I just went through a period of self-examination saying, well, what's the next step? I'm not going to be as active a parent under this circumstance. I'm working, my wife's working. And I said, well, what do I really want to do? What do I really want? Do I want a red sports car? Do I want to take up parachuting?
Yes.
And I decided, no, neither of those. And the answer I came up with was, you know, there's a lot of things that puzzle me. I want to know more things. How come I go to an art museum and I really don't understand what I'm looking at? How come some books are just books and others are literature? What's the difference? Just a whole range of things. And I was very fortunate in that university was offering, excuse me, a program in which you could examine all of those things and eventually set into a concentration. So I did. I took a class for one semester to try it out, and then I took another class the next semester. I just loved it. And in the end, I concentrated on history, which always was one of my lifelong passions. And I did a master's project, and I graduated. It was the slow path. It took 6 years because I was working, and even if I wasn't an active parent as I'd been, I still had to field questions of desperation from my students at college. And you know, they're going to go on and need to establish themselves in the work world. I was going to be there for them. So long story short is, yes, I wanted to know things, and I got my degree, and I got this knowledge because no matter how much you learn, no matter how much you know, it's never enough. You actually get asking yourself more questions. And so I continued in my work life, but I was a different person. I was a better person.
Of course. No, I just think it's a good lesson for anyone out there who's been thinking about it. And I always say that if you continue to think about something, if it keeps popping up in your mind, then you should probably do something about it. The next step is action. And why not? I mean, I'd rather go I come to the end of this life and say, well, at least I tried. I know that I tried and I gave it all that I got, and who knows, maybe it will work out. So I think that's a wonderful lesson for anyone. There's more to talk about with you too, but let's meet our third guest, Margaret DeLuca. Margaret was the first one to reach out to me. So talked about Michigan a little bit, 20 some years, where you grew up. You moved to Atlanta, and for the next 20 years, you worked in a travel agency, accounting and reporting. You also joined a theater group where you volunteered on and off stage for several years. So what would you say was your most memorable experience in a...
Oh, okay. So, well, I've done a lot and I've had a lot of fun. And the bottom line was, if it wasn't fun, I'm not going to do it.
Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. For a long time, I suffered with depression and anxiety. I had tried therapy before, but struggled finding a therapist I connected with until I found BetterHelp. That's why I am so excited to share BetterHelp's mission to make therapy more affordable and more accessible, because finding a therapist can be hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online. Remote therapy sessions, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. Click the link in description and receive 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. And by clicking that link, you support this channel. Plus, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. I was struggling for a long time, and BetterHelp was where I found my therapist, Whitney, who I still see weekly for almost 2 years now. So, if you're struggling like I was, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in description or go to betterhelp.com/altereagle. That's betterhelp.com/altereagle. There's no better time than now to start your mental health journey. Thank you again, BetterHelp, for supporting this channel.
I did an herbal class
Okay.
because I don't have my Florida garden and my hydroponics. I'm in an apartment here. So I have container gardening, and I like my herbs.
Okay.
With issues, eating issues and so on, you just need to be careful. So I brew my own tea. I grow it and brew it, and I grow catnip for the cat, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth.
And you also make little, didn't you say you make little garden things?
I do. I make fairy flowers, recycled yard art with glass.
Yes, yard art. That's what it was
It's like bling
called.
for the garden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
He's not one of them.
Yeah, well, I don't know. He's cool, though.
Yeah, he is.
He's really cool. And I'm like, that's the first thing I noticed when I came in here. I was like, how cool is that? Like, that's right in my wheelhouse. So anyways,
So
are you allowed to take classes here if you're in your 40s, or do you have to be retired?
Oh,
okay.
yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. Good to know. Yeah. So that's a good thing to know, right? So so the classes that you offer here, let's talk to Janet again. Talk to me about a few of the classes that I guess maybe you're offering right now or in the spring or.
Well, we're just closing out the fall semester. Our semesters run September, October, November, and then they start again March, April, and May. Okay. And so this, would you want to hear about the semester we just finished or the semester that's coming up?
Let's talk about both.
Okay, well,
Give me a quick little what's finishing up now.
It's easy for me to talk about the ones that I help teach.
Yeah,
so
of course.
these hand drums, I did a drum circle, and it's a very non-threatening drum circle, so people do not have to have any real drumming talent to come and take place in that.
Cool.
We have a book club that we do every month. We pick we vote on which books we're going to read, and then we do the book clubs.
Okay.
We actually just had a really interesting one Tom taught on the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And what it was that went into it. I mean, we know it as, the Gordon Lightfoot song, but you don't know all the history necessarily that goes into it.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting.
That's fascinating.
And let's see. Oh, and we just had We had one on Christmas cookies, the histories of Christmas cookies, and I found out the origin of the cookie table.
Okay, please tell me, because I thought
Okay.
that was like a Pennsylvania thing.
It is a Pennsylvania thing.
and it's primarily usually for weddings, right?
It's a wedding table.
It's a
yes.
wedding
Wedding
table.
cookie table.
Okay.
It starts up in. It started during the Great Depression. People
okay.
couldn't afford to buy, or for all the sugar and everything to make a big cake, but everybody could afford to make a couple dozen of cookies. So both sides of the family, and probably some friends, everybody would bring a couple dozen of cookies. So instead of having a wedding cake, they would have cookies. And then after the Depression was over and people could, have a cake again, we just decided we really liked having cookies.
Yeah. And it's so
yes.
great because then you get to bring like little like containers and people can take cookies home.
Yes.
Because you end up having, I went to
Oh,
a
yes.
wedding. One of my close friends, I went to her wedding like 6 years ago, I want to say. And I don't know if I've seen a cookie table like this cookie table. When I tell you like the amounts of cookies that were on this table and the degree of like detail, I was like, this is the best day ever. And I had flown from California and everyone's like, why are you coming back with all these cookies? And I was like, well, there's a thing that we do in Pennsylvania. So yes, the cookie table.
The cookie table.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then I had done, we did Christmas music, and we went into the history of Christmas music, and then three of my friends and I did the performing, but everybody got to sing along with the stuff, and we had those two back to back, so it was like this big pre-Christmas party day.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun with that too.
Okay, cool. And then what are we looking forward to in the spring? And when would be like, how late can you register for a class? Like up until the day that it starts, or?
People.
Open houses in February.
Yes.
So you have a February open house?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have an open house, and people can sign up there. They can go online. They can come in and have a cookie and a cup of
Cookies again, yes.
cookies again.
I like this theme of the cookies. Okay.
And you get one for each hand. So coffee, cookies, sign up for classes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. What's the date of I'm going to put all this. So there's like in the YouTube video,
Here we go.
I put all the information in there and I'll put the links to everything. I always have like a resource and then below that I put all the resources. So all that will be in there. So it's
this year it's February 7th and 8th.
Okay.
It's Friday and Saturday of 2025.
okay.
From like 10 to 2, and it's up here at the Fowler Building, which is in Slippery Rock. It's near the Volunteer Fire Department in Slippery Rock. It's Elm Street.
Yeah, I
don't the
remember. I
number off-
remember as I came around the corner. I remembered because my first year with the Eagle, I was streaming the parade, and I made the mistake of being at the beginning of the parade.
Okay.
And then as everybody was coming here, I'm running down the street with a camera on a tripod, and the whole time I'm like, I really hope this camera doesn't fall off this tripod because I'm gonna be in a lot of trouble if it does, and breaks because it's brand new. And ran all the way over here to the firehouse to catch the end, and the band. I think it was the high school band, maybe, and they stood over there and continued to play and all of that. So, yeah. But as soon as I came around the corner, I knew where I was. I was like, oh, I ran up that alley.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the open house is not the only time you can sign up. You can sign up online. It's a good thing to come to because you get to ask questions and see a lot of things.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
But you can sign up really anytime. If you don't make it then, you sign up later. We do have somebody in the office a few days a week.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you can come to, we call them classes, but in some ways they're presentations, just like you would get a speaker for the Chamber of Commerce or the Rotary Club. The difference is the committee that works on this does a fantastic job of getting people who know what they're talking about, whether they're learned academic people or whether they're self-learned or whether they're hobbyists, because anybody who has a hobby that they're really into knows it very well and is very happy to speak about it. And we also have day trips as well.
Okay.
So with that kind of variety, coming to the open house is a really good idea, but it's not like it's the only time.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's nice, though, for people to come up here and just even see where you are, right? And meet you and learn a little bit more about what
Absolutely.
you're doing. So in the spring, you're doing, do we get into what kind of classes we're doing in the spring? Do we want to really quickly?
We should talk about that. Well, Margaret is talk
Somebody on
about your classes, Margaret. That you're
I'm
with
only doing
Curtis.
2 classes this semester, and one is a trip to the zoo. And, I have a massage therapist who is teaching us acupuncture. Yeah, he's great. He's a massage therapist, and he works with acupressure. So if you have carpal tunnel, he can show you where to press and work on that and alleviate some of the discomfort.
Yeah.
And so everyone has their cell phones out and they're taking pictures of where they want to press for what. It's a great class.
Yeah. I bet that is a good class.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can speak to, well, acupuncture and acupressure. I've had all those things. I was an athlete for a long time and a professional dancer. So, and like when you mentioned Vegas, one of my first jobs was I was actually a Las Vegas showgirl. I was in Jubilee at Bally's. So I wore Bob Mackie costumes and
Wow.
so that's one of my claims. I've kind of been all over. I sort of refer to myself as like Jane Fonda of Butler County.
You better
So,
watch that.
I mean, hopefully someday I'll look like Jane Fonda. I mean, she looks fantastic. But yeah, it's it was a real honor to do that. I was teaching dance after college and renting a basement apartment for $50 a month, making like maybe $650 a month, and had just enough money to buy a ticket to Vegas and somehow got a one-way ticket there and stayed in a hotel I probably shouldn't have stayed in, but there was nothing else available. And my sister-in-law flew out and stayed with me, and we were like wearing our shoes like in bed because we were like, I don't know if we should be, like
Ready to run.
yeah, we were ready to, we had our bags packed and ready to go. And then the last night, there was a convention there, and I had never been to Las Vegas, and there was a convention, and all the hotels were booked. But the audition went into Sunday, and when you make it all the way through, then you get to see the show, and you get to sit up in this light booth, and they had passerelles. So passerelle is a stage that comes over the audience, and they had the side stages, and then the revolves that came out. And when I finally got into the show, I started on a 14-foot platform. In the middle of the stage was open, and there was an elevator that came up, and it was like almost like a 3-story drop to the basement. It was an unbelievable experience. But I remember like showing up there and thinking, I don't know if hopefully this goes well. Well, let's see, because I just spent $220 that I probably could have used for the next 2 months for food, and hopefully I get this job. And I did. I made it through, and the second day I had a dance with all the girls in the show, which was very intimidating because they were all really tall and gorgeous, and they had their big show earrings and their lashes and everything and their silver heels. And it was pretty remarkable. So one of the principal dancers, actually, this is one of the things that I remembered. She was 50 years old, and she'd been in the show since it had opened in 82, Jubilee opened at Bally's. And she had been a principal dancer since day one. And her name was Linda. And she was still kicking her leg. She was 50. And she was still like rocking it. Every night she was there. She had only missed, I think, like maybe a total of like 2 days of work ever for being sick. Yeah.
Well, if you need a workout, we'll put in a yoga class.
Okay.
Get
Sure.
you stretching
Yeah.
again.
If you want a bar class, let me know. We could do some whatever. Come in here, do some.
Yeah, well, this last
Like work.
semester we had pickleball, right?
Oh,
We did
cool.
pickleball,
Yeah.
And then they're going to do a walking class.
That was hilarious. Well, I'm not going to do the walking
you're not.
class.
Okay.
It just,
Didn't work.
yeah.
Okay.
But that's kind of the point. Our offerings are varied. We like to think there's something for everybody, and there kind of is. And just an aside for a minute, I also have acted in the theater. I've been on the stage and behind the scenes at Butler Little Theater and the Red Barn in Farmville.
Okay.
But I digress. We're talking about future classes this spring. I'm going to present a class about Lafayette. Revolutionary War general, as you know, but there's many more amazing things.
Yeah.
Like the fact he was involved in 3 revolutions, not just ours, was only one. And the fact that he's the one who gave Independence Hall its name. So there's always stuff of interest to somebody. And, look at what she's talking about. Look at what she's talking
Yeah.
about. And I'm teaching that. So
Yeah, there's so many
It's-
different.
it's why we keep coming back, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know?
It's all sociable. We're all interacting. We're all teaching each other different aspects of our lives
Yeah.
and hobbies and interests. Tom puts on a great lecture. Just a
Well, yeah, I
great
imagine he
lecture.
does. I mean, I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of people out there that are interested in history who just you mentioning like what you're going to be teaching. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are just fascinated by just what you said there, like how he wasn't part of just one revolution, how he's part of three, and knowing more about that. It's like peeling an onion, right?
Yeah. Like everybody knows, Magellan's expedition was the first one to go around the world. And most people know Magellan himself did not make it. But when I presented that, I said, hey, he started with 5 ships. Only 1 made it back. He started with 250 people. Only 20 made it back. And the ship that made it back was in terrible shape.
I'm sure it was.
So, and they were starving. In
Well,
fact,
what was the time period of that again? Because
that
brain's
was
not-
1519.
okay,
So it really was just a generation after Columbus.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it, during that time, I mean, there was like plagues, and I mean, what all was going on that they were dealing with besides the fact that they were at sea, right? So,
and scurvy.
yeah, scurvy. Oh,
And
just-
I believe not everybody, but a lot of them were criminal.
okay,
Some, yeah.
yeah,
You know what? There was a lot of tension between Portugal and Spain. He's Portuguese and he's sailing for Spain. So a lot of his crew were not really happy with him.
okay, wow, Magellan. That's just a cool name, though, right?
Yeah. Named a satellite after it.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. So, what do you think about are there other organizations that you guys connect with that are similar? That was something that popped into my brain that are like in other different areas, or are you guys kind of your own?
Well, these two went to the convention for
Yeah.
life learning.
We
Okay.
are on our own.
Okay.
But there are others like us,
Okay.
but not here. I think the closest one is probably the Osher organization at Carnegie Mellon.
Okay.
But what Margaret's referring to is we were 2 of the 3 people who went to a conference. It was called Southern Regional Conference for Lifelong Learning back in July. And it was in Lexington, Kentucky. We got some ideas because we're kind of small.
Yeah.
And we can grow and we can do even more. But we need some ideas about how to go about it.
As far as funding goes, I mean, obviously, like, do you get grants? Do you get state funding? Like, how does that work? Are you always looking for? I mean, there's so many. You see, especially now, grants are becoming like a huge part of a lot of organizations, and it's
especially-
important for us to stay connected. That's how we stay connected, and that's what you're doing essentially. Is human connection is something that's important for anyone. It affects your mental health, and so that's why what you're doing is so important. But what can you say about that? Can you say anything about that? Or
Well, we're a nonprofit.
Okay.
We do go for donations.
okay,
We are hoping to get into grant writing soon.
mm-hmm.
You're touching on something that we're transitioning to.
Yeah,
We have made a lot of, when we were talking earlier about working with this Slippery Rock students for credit for their communications course, that was part of a rebranding, and we're doing that to strengthen our ties with the university. And yes, we do want to get into grant writing. We've already started that process of educating ourselves. We're not there yet. But, the funding, we are a volunteer organization, so to keep operating, we do have a dues structure. People can join. They can join at a couple of different levels. They can take a class and try us out, or they could pay a little more and take 3 classes. Everybody always wants money. We are fortunate. We have some, but yeah, to sustain ourselves and to keep going, we do look to move into that grant writing.
yeah. Well, it's definitely a growing a growing need in a lot of organizations. And I personally had never done anything like that. And over the summer, I applied for a grant for the podcast. I learned a lot from that. I got a teeny tiny bit of money. Actually, these chairs that you're sitting on, I bought with my grant.
Good chairs.
Well, I needed them I also produce a sports podcast. So we were doing I wanted to do a live thing at the high school to kick off football season. And aesthetically, I needed to look like sort of a sports thing. And I thought, well, director's chairs, why don't we just get them and then I'll put them in the studio? Because the chairs I was using in my office, I'd actually stolen from someone else in the building. I went into his office. I was like, oh, those are really nice chairs. Do you use those? Because they look like they just sit here.
Oh, you're shameless.
So when I first got there, I was like, could I borrow those for a while? And so he let me borrow. They were beautiful too. They had like purple in them, and that's my favorite color. So I was like, okay. And they were on wheels. So it was easy for guests to like slide into the table. And, these ones weren't moving the table, but they worked, right? And they're working, and I'm able to put the microphones on here. And so, yeah. But I did learn a lot from that. So I just say, when it comes to what you guys are doing, be proud of what you're doing and be willing to put yourself out there. And if you find something, or if I come across something in my research, because that's kind of part of what we're doing right now, I'll send it your way and say, hey, this might be a grant that you could possibly apply for. And who knows, right?
That would be great.
You never know.
Because our instructors are mostly retired. Some of them aren't. But they're also looking for something else to do in retirement. The social aspect, the educational aspect it's just tops.
Yeah.
It's just tops. And
Yeah.
it's just so handy to have in my backyard.
Come into your mic just a little bit more.
It's handy to have in my backyard. I've met some terrific people. We go out to lunch. We meditate.
Yeah.
We do DJ trivia at the local bar.
Okay.
We do.
Do you guys have a team? Do you have a DJ team?
Actually, I was going to do that this session, but the team I'm on is doing so well. I got greedy, and I
Okay.
want to keep winning
Well,
with that team.
well, sure.
But yeah, I probably will get a team,
Yeah. Okay.
and it'll be every Tuesday night. And
That's fun.
yeah.
So what sort of categories do they have? You said it's DJ trivia?
It's DJ trivia. It's just because there's a DJ and he
Okay.
does the trivia, and it's all around Pennsylvania at the exact same time. So you can't have a friend call you from another bar that would have just had the same question.
Oh.
It's the same question. It's a network that goes
Oh,
out.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I think they have another one in town on Thursday nights, but they cover everything. And we need younger people because they do a lot of 80s, 90s music.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah, that's not mine. That's,
1980, baby.
Yeah.
Yes.
and then just all kinds of trivia. Janet's going to join the group on Tuesday night, and she's going to be our hook into the scientific area.
Okay.
So-
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just need someone on each team that can cover all your cover all your bases.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then you're unstoppable.
So this is the sort of thing we do. We get together, we make friends,
Yeah.
it's just enjoyable. It's enjoyable.
Yes, one of our ongoing classes is board games. And for a lot of seniors and people of other ages, when you live alone, or maybe it's just two people, board games aren't a lot of fun. But some people really enjoy doing board games. I'm one of them. And it's great to sit down with other people that like to play board games and do that. And when you were mentioning about this upcoming semester, I'm going to be doing one on the Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C., how that came about.
Oh, that's cool.
I'll have to dip into Japan a little bit, too, to as to where that originated from. Another ILR member and I went to Puerto Vallarta last year together. It was not related to ILR at that point, but we decided we would do a little travelogue about Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
So that's coming up. And I I'm also I've when I went to Puerto Vallarta, I took a suitcase full of feminine products with me. There's an organization called Days for Girls that provides for third world countries feminine products, feminine hygiene pads and napkins that are reusable. And there's I found out about the organization in Wexford that makes these products by hand. And then I found out Grove City also has another area that does that. So we're going to do a field trip in the spring and go to where they make these products. Hopefully, as other ILR members are traveling, which a lot of us do, and if you're going to a third world country, and hey, just take this extra suitcase with you and drop it off. I dropped mine off at a day school for girls when I was down there, so they could distribute it out to them. So, there's a lot of this finding little paths through, and putting it together and finding out things, and so it's like a very fluid, growing organization in that regard.
Yeah.
In fact, as you're speaking, we have had several travel-related classes. People have shared their experiences, and the diversity. You mentioned that we have a group that has met for lunch out. They go to different places, and that's a real social thing. We've had and continue to have classes in Bible study. We talk about a real varied approach to everything. Yeah, that's what we do.
Well, yeah, we were talking a little bit about some things beforehand too, and I think it's a good point because I got a little involved with the Grapevine Center in Butler when you mentioned feminine products. A girl that I went to high school with works there as a counselor, and she fills a closet every year with feminine products. And she said, you wouldn't believe how many, you think about homeless women, it's not just food that people need or housing. You think about that, and it's just kind of sad to think about that could keep someone from getting a job or from just going out in public. I mean, you can't attending school because another friend of mine who got her master's in public health spent a lot of time in Africa. She did a bunch of different trips, and I had interviewed her for another podcast I did for a group where this is what they were doing. They were working with a lot of women primarily who couldn't provide for their families. A lot of them were born with HIV. They were born with it, but then they were shamed for it when it was something that they had no control over, or they were getting it from their husbands, and then their husbands were leaving them. And so they had children, and they had no way to provide for them. So they were going to this center and getting this program where they were learning new skills, how to make either their own clothing or soaps that they could sell then to provide for their families. But a lot of the young girls, like their children, they couldn't even provide, feminine products for them. So these girls were missing school every month.
Right.
And then they weren't able to finish school because they had missed so much school. And it's like, well, you can't go to school. They didn't even have underwear. So it's something that we don't really think about, you know, but there are people in our country who can't afford that. They can't even afford food. So it's a good thing. And we talked about travel too. I know, Tom, you've been to a lot of places. I know you've said you've been to every continent.
Yes. I don't want you to think I'm a grand adventurer as much as the fact that we managed to find some really good tours.
Yeah.
And Antarctica in particular is kind of a tough one because you really can't go onto it unless you're part of a scientific expedition, although there are some cruises where it's adventurous perhaps. But if you find the right place, you can get like within 30 feet of it, and we spent several days there. I will also tell you another one that's a bit difficult to get to is Australia, mainly because it's a 16-hour flight from the West Coast. First, you got to get to the West Coast.
Yeah.
However, I will segue to Janet here because she has a friend in Australia and she's been able to go several times. So I'm not going to talk about Australia. She will. The other continents, of course. And we're, you know what, the thing with retiring, which you brought up, is all of a sudden you have unstructured time. And the real question you should ask yourself is, what will I do with this time? I will do some things perhaps of volunteering and make the world better, but I will also need to do something for myself. So just like when I was in my late 40s thinking, what do I really want to do? I want to know stuff. This is sort of what I do with travel and with ILR. And, you know, there are a lot of professional studies that look into what should older people do. And one thing is, you should exercise, you should eat right, et cetera, but you should keep learning. You should keep your brain sharp.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be as complicated as learning a foreign language, although you can try that too. Like I say, just coming to a presentation on something or going out and being social so you're not isolated is very beneficial.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, it's true. I mean, we have to constantly keep our minds stimulated, or it's just like anything. It's like muscles atrophying, you know? After so long, you're going to feel that. And when you start moving again, you're going to feel it for sure at first, but it's kind of getting past that. So I think it's a wonderful thing. It's like, don't skip a beat, right?
Well, the other thing is people talking about bucket lists. You know, what do you want to do with your life? And, you know, when you're in the second half of your life, you need to really seriously look at your bucket list of things that you want to do before you pass away. And one of the things that had been on my bucket list for a very long time was I wanted to go to an opera. But I really didn't know how to go about that. But luckily, one of my friends, who happens to be an ILR member, mentioned, oh, well, we go twice a semester. We'd go down to the Benedum Center and go to see an opera. And she's actually sitting here today. And so my first semester, I thought, okay, well, let me give a try for try an opera. So I did, and it was wonderful. And they do caption above. They call it super titles. They put captions above, so when they're singing in another language, you can still follow the storyline. And I've been to several operas now. So that is, again, one of those things that it's nice to have an easy way to get to something that you want to do, but don't really know how to line it up and do it yourself. But if you can do that and then do it with a group too, rather than trying to finagle it by yourself.
Well,
Yeah.
and with the group, we do carpooling.
Right.
So people who normally would never drive into Pittsburgh don't have to.
Yeah.
They just get in the back seat.
Well, that's how I got to the Cathedral of Learning, and that's also how I got to the Flight 93 Memorial.
Yeah, I saw
Oh,
you
yeah.
went there. Yeah. Yeah, the Cathedral Learning is my favorite building in Pittsburgh. Actually, when I was little, I had to have surgery on my ears, and it's kind of crazy, but I was at Children's, and when I came out of surgery, my window was literally facing the Cathedral Learning. It was perfect. It was right in the window. My mom couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a cast on my head, so that wasn't fun, but it's fine. Whatever. I got to see the Cathedral Learning, so it was pretty cool.
Well, and they also offer like kayaking and trips, bike trips. And
Oh, cool.
they had bird watching up at Pymatooning, and we're going to be doing one in the spring. We're going to have a local speaker. Her name's Polly Shaw come in and talk about Preston Park in Butler.
Yep.
And then the next day we're going to do a field trip to Preston Park.
Okay.
So we're doing
Okay.
things like that. So there's a variety of
Yeah,
interests.
so many
There's
things.
that and you just pick and choose which ones, flip your switch and you go, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll do that one.
Yeah, well, the opera's actually on my bucket list,
There you go.
You can come.
so I will drive.
You can definitely
You can
come.
drive.
My mom made me drive into Pittsburgh right after I got my permit. So I drove into Pittsburgh for the first time when I was 16 years old. And she just taught me, she was like, I don't want you to be afraid. And I was like, well, I'm not. So let's go. So I have no fear of driving into Pittsburgh at all. So we have just a few minutes here to wrap up. There's so much I feel like we could talk about. There's so much more I feel like we could say. I'd like just each of you to, I don't know, just kind of close out with something you feel might be important to say and what it means. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who I think just being able to have someone to go to lunch with, like that's such a big deal when you get to a certain point in life, right? There's like a loneliness. I mean, my grandmother, I can only speak to my grandmother. When after my grandfather passed away, everyone thought, well, maybe you want to meet someone new, and she just didn't. She said, no, I met the love of my life, and I was like, I'll have friends. She's like, but I have no desire to, have a male companion. I have no desire to get married again. That's just how she felt, and you have to respect that. So with that, it was important for her to have her friendships, which she did, and she went to church every Sunday, and she had Bible study, and she was good at getting outside. So I don't know. Let's actually start with Margaret and just say, is there anything else that you'd like to share or say? Or
I think I moved here 3 years ago and knew nobody except my brother and sister-in-law. And through the ILR, I can't go grocery shopping without running into somebody I know. And it's great.
I love that.
There's a whole social outlay in these little towns. Saturday, I'm going to New Wilmington. We're going to try out the buckwheat
Pancakes.
Crepes. The buckwheat crepes.
What time are you doing that on Saturday?
We're done doing that on Saturday.
You said buckwheat crepes. I was like,
'cause we can
sign
eat
me up.
buckwheat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I go down to the strip district to get the real feta cheese that they make without mixing it with the cow's milk. You go to the different places. I'm just learning little by little all the little townships and friends that go with them. So we had a meditation group for a while, and they came over and meditated. We talked about doing a Reiki share. There's all kinds of stuff. You can go to the Ark and you can play pickleball or just go swimming, and you'll meet somebody. You'll see somebody you know. And it's just great.
Yeah.
It makes it simple. It makes retirement worthwhile.
That was great.
She'll put the applause in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. She has her applause button, so she can throw that in there.
Yeah, I'll throw that in there.
Okay.
All right. Well, all of us are multifaceted, whether we realize it or not. Some people are defined by their work life. That makes retirement quite an adjustment. I didn't have any trouble adjusting, and I just thought I will do what I want to do, and when I'm tired of doing it, I'll quit. So I did act in theater, but after a while, I did enough of that, and I went on to do something else. And so, but the ILR has kept me here because of the range of offerings they have. And as you point out, it's very social. This is very relaxed. And some of my best friends in this region are here in the ILR because, you just keep seeing them, and we all laugh about what we just heard, or we enjoy each other's company socially or on one of the day trips. So it's just been tremendous for me personally. And I just can't imagine, when we don't have a semester going because it's the dead of winter or the heat of summer, it's like, well, I'm kind of glad to get a break because now I'm not so busy scheduled. But you know what? And then I start to miss it, and I look forward to the next semester, and I can't wait till it starts. And I see the course offerings. I say, I'd like to take this. Oh, I'll take this thing about Jesse James. I don't know anything about him. Or I'll take this. And pretty soon it's like, okay, you know what? This is not practical. I have to reduce this. And then the fact that I know several of the presenters, because our presenters love doing it, and they like the fact that they get very engaged with the people they're presenting to, because we are not a shy group when it comes to asking questions of them. So it's a lot of fun, and maybe some people have different ideas about what's fun, but for me, this is fun.
It is fun.
Yeah. All right, Lady President.
Alrighty. I was not ever worried about filling my time after retirement. I always knew, I learned from a young age that, if you want things to happen, you have to sort of make it happen. And, but I did fall into, you're very used to your job, and teaching is a 24/7 kind of job. And then to retire, and then I fell into the caretaking, which I would not trade that for the world either. But eventually, my mom and dad passed, and suddenly all these caretaking roles had shifted for me. And there's that thing of you need to do a few things for yourself sometimes. And luckily, like I say with my friend there, well, do you want to go to an opera? So, I said something about it. And, yeah, let's go to the opera. So then I find out this, again, a little world existed that I didn't know about. And, you're able to pick and choose classes, and some of them are very social kind of classes, and some of them are very just informational. And then the field trips where you're going out to, learn about McConnell's Mill or something like that. And you get to know people and find other interests and stuff. And, of course, being a teacher, I was missing the classroom. So, and this is a very different type of teaching for me because I always taught in the special education field, and it was generally the children who would be, their next step would not be public school anymore. Okay, so it was the lower functioning students. Which I loved dearly. That was my niche. And but it's nice to be able to teach at a higher level and teach, like I did a 3-unit thing on Australia because I had been to Australia, and it was nice to be able to, do a PowerPoint and do engage the audience that way. And then that sort of just opens the door. And I think a lot of these things are like dominoes, that somebody has this idea and then somebody else, another person that's sitting out in the audience, it's like he plays ukulele and I play ukulele. So let's start a ukulele group. Okay, let's do that. So it was a very spontaneous, fluid, organic thing. And I love that about ILR.
Yeah, and your ukulele's right behind you.
And my ukulele is right.
Can you play
there.
anything?
Not right now. I didn't tune it.
Okay.
It's for display.
Sorry, I just totally put you on the spot.
It's for display purposes only right now.
She's like, no.
I didn't tune it.
Okay. I actually got a baritone ukulele.
Okay.
I haven't taken classes in a while, and I need to trim my nails. Although I feel like I want to kind of do the Dolly Parton way.
Dolly Parton, and with her, it's amazing.
She's got her nails, and she plays, and I'm like, I think I can make it happen. Yeah. And these are my nails, so I'm like, I think I'm gonna try to. I know it's hard.
I play guitar, but I always keep mine short. But I've seen Dolly Parton with really long fingernails.
Really long fingernails, and she's still playing. So why not? It's possible. It's possible. So we'll see. Well, thank you all so much. I do want to thank you for reaching out to me, and
thank you for returning that call.
You're welcome. Yeah, persistently. You're good at the persistence. So I was like, I didn't forget about you. I got you. I was like, I like to write in my calendar, and then I also put things in my phone, and I'll remember to reach out to someone like September 1st. And I remember seeing I had a Post-it note with your name on it and your phone number, and I was like, oh, she emailed me. I was like, I got to get back to her. I'm like at my computer, like doing something. And I was like, we're pushing back a little bit. So thank you. And thank you for your patience and for everything and just for all that you do. And yeah, I need to come travel with you all to the opera. Like that. I think
take ukulele.
And ukulele. Yeah.
And remember, you don't have to be retired, even though that word retirement is in our name.
Yeah. But I think, but the thing is that you all are you're the teachers. You're the ones teaching too. So do you have other teachers that are that are not
outside teachers?
Sometimes somebody will come who is working.
Okay.
And they fit it into their schedule somehow.
Okay.
I do remember a history presentation from a history teacher at Knock High School. He came up at like 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. Somehow he arranged for that. Yeah. We have all kinds of people instructing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you want to do a podcast class.
There you go.
You guys want to do, I study voiceover too. We could do some commercial stuff or, Yeah.
I can do voiceover.
I took an animation class from Donald Duck. There's been 3 different voiceover actors who have voiced Donald Duck, and the current one, I can't remember his name. It's Danny. I can't remember his last name. And then the gentleman who
Mel Blanc.
And then
He's
Bob,
old.
Bob Bergen, who was, I think, Porky the Pig. I took a class with him once too. So, yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Doing Audible books.
Well, yeah, we could do that. That's something that anyone can do, really, as long as you have, like, if you went into a closet. Closets are the best place to do audio because you've got the carpet and the clothes, so it helps with the sound quality. And that's what I do at home. I have mics at home. I have a soundboard at home, and I go into my closet. And my clothes aren't in there anymore. Actually, because it's so small. I actually turned it into a sound booth, so my clothes are somewhere else. Yep. And people are like, well, how do you? I was like, well, because you do what you got to do, right? Like, if I've got to do this to make more money, that's what I do. And so, yeah, you're standing in your closet and you shut the door and sweat, and you've got your little, you've got your microphone and a little light in there, and that's all you need. So, well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
It was just really special to meet you all and sit down with you. And I know there's so much more to you than there's so much here. Like, we could talk forever. So, yeah, but thank you. And, I'll record like a little bit more about what you guys do here. I always record like a short little intro talking about like what we're talking about today, and just something I don't think people prepare themselves for, that feeling of, well, what now, right? You hear so often people are like, oh, retirement, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. And it's like, yeah, but what's next? Like, are you planning what's next? Because you're still alive. Like, there's more to do.
Yeah. Well, I retired twice.
Oh, well, that happens. Yeah. So you're like Tom Brady.
Yeah. Well, not quite, but close.
You don't have his money.
I don't have his looks.
That's okay.
Yeah. So
A lot of that's fake. So
yeah, it is. Yeah. So retirement's it's great, but you actually have to plan for it.
yeah.
You actually have to do the work and find out what you want to do. Where do you want to volunteer? You don't want to volunteer? Fine. Go play poker. Do something.
But Tom's point of the continuing to learn, I think that's like really important for our minds, because we live in a world full of disease and so many things, and I think keeping your mind sharp and just continuing to learn and read and is just so important. So yes.
And we also reach homebodies because we put a lot of our classes on Zoom.
Oh, that's good.
And people can sign up and receive those.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming to listen. We have a group of individuals here listening. They're clapping. There's your applause. That's the applause that you want. You want the room.
I want the room.
You want the room applause. Okay, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Alter Eagle. Join me every Monday for a new episode. And be sure to click subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Follow us on Instagram at Alter Eagle Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, stay hopeful, stay kind.